So, wow. The most dangerous thing I ever did in my life, I didn't realize was dangerous at the time. None of us did. And there was a couple groups that did this. It's mid-90s. I just recently got out of the military. I'm living up in UP of Michigan. Here's Michigan, and that's like way up here, and here's where I'm living. And one of my friends who lives just a few houses down that I met, he's pretty cool. I later end up dating his crazy daughter. His roommate comes back one day and goes, "Hey, we went in this mine shaft." See, up there they used to mine copper everywhere up there, so there's a lot of old copper mines from like the 1800s and stuff, and most of them are abandoned. And typically when they have an abandoned mine shaft, what they do is they bulldoze over the top, because it's hard rock mine shafts going down. So they just bulldoze over the dirt and the rocks and everything and fill in the top part. And we're like, oh great, yeah, there's a lot of them. We don't feel like digging through the rock and getting through all that. And he's like, no, this one is still open, the gate's there, and luckily after he visited, the padlock fell off magically. You know, him and his sledgehammer that fell off. So Pete and Greg, and names are different of course, because you know, Greg, he reminded me of a California surfer type. His license plate on his car said, "I'm nuts." You know, so yeah, the fucker was probably crazy. Peter, he was just a dopey, fun, nice, good guy. You know, what do you call a good guy? You know, I'm sure he never amounted to anything in life. And like, awesome, I want to go see it, because I've been already doing anything for adventure up there. There's absolutely nothing to do there but look at trees and mosquitoes. And, you know, I went to did you go to the waterfalls? Yes. Did you go to the hidden falls? Yes. Did you go to painted caves? Yes. Did you go? And they're naming off all these places, and yes, 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 yes. And he goes, well, let's go do the mine shaft. And we're like, okay, where's that? And he goes, well, you go up to Mohawk past the snow thermometer. Yes, there's a snow thermometer up there. You leave it to the people in the Upers come up with a snow thermometer, because I thought, wouldn't it just be 32 degrees? Isn't that how cold snow is, because it's ice? But evidently no, it's fucking really tall, and that's what they measure their annual snow with, and it's insanely taller than you think it should ever be in a place where humans actually live. That's why I don't live there no more, because we shouldn't live there. It snows too much. And he goes, it's just past that, and you go down to the second break in the trees, and you make a right down the dirt over there, and you go out through the field a bit and through the woods, and then you take the third right at a tree. And I'm like, whoa, you want me to drive past a snow thermometer? Check, I know where that actually is. And then look for a gap in the trees and drive my car through there. Am I supposed to be looking for like a three-legged dog also, and you know, like a cow laying down? What the fuck? I'm never going to find this shit. Just drive my ass out there and show me. And he's like, well, I do have 3 flashlights, and I'm not doing anything for the next couple hours. I'm like, well, I got a bag of weed, so let's go. And so we hopped in his car and drove on up there. And which was like a 30-minute drive, you know. Everything's a 30-minute drive in the UP. Nothing's close together. It's dumb. So we get there, and we go past the snow thermometer, and yeah, there's 2 breaks in the trees. The second one, we go down, and it's like a quarter mile. It loops back around, past where they're doing some logging. That's how he found it, because he was out checking where they were doing logging, looking for, I don't know, copper on the ground, whatever the fuck, I don't know. For all I know, he could have been out there trying to steal bulldozers. And we go down there and walk down this little part, and there's a gate, you know, that's been rusted off, and the solid door, you can see where there's a latch, and there used to be a padlock, but the padlock's magically broken in half on the side, and And then later on, it's missing, you know. Go figure, right? So we open it, we go down first bit, and it is the steepest fucking stairs you can imagine, because it's not really made for people to walk in this way. It was service for the train carts. They'd hook up to a cable and pull them up with a steam wrench, and they'd be full of ore, and that's how they'd bring it out, because they didn't have conveyor belts that'd go that steep, or bucket conveyor belts, I guess. The guide rail is an old rusty steel cable running down. That's on the left side, and then it's just shaft, and you know, some of the steel supports that are supposed to be holding up there are gone. And some are rusted out, some we can see halfway down the shaft, some of the rock is halfway down as we're walking down this thing that's probably a 65, 75 degree angle slope going down, and these stairs are just, you know, barely not a ladder, you know, and this thing, and we're trudging down, and the stairs are just carved out of the rock and coated with a little bit of concrete over it, you know, slurry concrete, so it can crumble off too in some of the areas. And you know, of course, we all got 3 of the weakest ass flashlights ever made to man, and we're going down here, and we're down, I don't know, about a quarter of a mile down, and there's a shaft that goes off on the right. So I'm like, well, let's go explore that, you know. You know, no one's been in here that we know of. None of our friends have been in here. And Greg, he just magically found one where the padlock fell off. And so we're walking down here, and it's a short shaft. It's only like a quarter mile long. And these are standard ore exploratory shafts, full exploratory. So they're 7 feet tall, 6, 7 feet wide, you know, and they go up and you can canter over, and it's pretty nice and flattish level ground, you know, most of it. This one we notice is kind of going uphill, and it goes up, and at the very end, like quarter mile down, you can see where it's all just collapsed in. It's actually the bulldozers on the other side have bulldozed and blown in that end. And although you could still see a couple spots, little beams of sunlight coming through, another area that I could probably get my arm through, but that'd be about it. And there's just big rocks and dirt everywhere else. We're like, well, okay, well, at least there's a little bit of fresh air coming through that little spot there. So safe we're not going to suffocate, at least in this part of the cave right away. And I figured there's only 3 of us breathing the air, so even if it has been sealed, you know, was my thought. I didn't know shit about bad air. Come find that out later. As we're going down, and we walk down this, we go back to the main shaft. Let's see what's down the shaft more. And we're walking down the shaft, and 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 you know, and it's that steep stairs holding this thing, and trying not to cut my hands up on the fucking rusty wire. Everything's rusty, wet. It's wet everywhere. It's dripping wet, and we get finally to the bottom, which I don't know how deep we are at this point. Half mile down, you know, something crazy, because we were going down for a very, 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 very long time, a very long time, probably 45 minutes to an hour. How far can you walk downstairs in 45 minutes to an hour? Quite fucking far, I believe. And down there's water, you know, which is kind of weird because we're standing at a 75-degree angle, so the water looks like it's sloping this way, away from you, because you've been standing on this steep slope for so long, your sense of balance starts to lean the opposite way, and you know it's an optical illusion that the water is actually level and that you're standing at an angle. But anyway, we're looking down in it, and we're shining our flashlights in the water, see what's in there, see if there's fish, anything, I don't know, gold, I don't know what the fuck we're looking for. See where the bottom is. Can't see the bottom. It just keeps going and going and going. There's some steel structures down, part in the water, part down, and you can see the steel is rusted like the pictures of the Titanic, you know, where they show drive by the Titanic and there's all the rust ribbons hanging down. This had the rust ribbons hanging down on that, and the water's just crystal clear because it hasn't been stirred or touched in probably 100 fucking years, you know. So it's highly stagnant water, which is very fucking dangerous, and I didn't know that at the time. Because we're throwing rocks in it and, you know, anything else, see how deep it is, you know, and, well, see, stagnant still water like that collects gases. Mines have gases. As a lot of those gases are heavier in air, they sit down on top of the water, and the water's soluble. So the water absorbs into them. And deep shaft of water will absorb all this gas all the way down, this poisonous gases. And they sit down there. And then when you throw a rock or something and splash the water, that little splash disturbs the gases, and they all bust out in a gas explosion, which isn't that big of a deal, except for the gas is poisonous and you're inside a mine shaft and you suffocate and fall down in the water and die also. But luckily that didn't happen. Yeah, luckily. Don't know why. And we decided, well, up about, 10 minutes back up where we were, we did see a shaft going off on the left. But since we could already see where the water was, we wanted to explore the water first. And we're done looking at the water. There's no Loch Ness Monster in there, no gold, and it just kind of keeps going. So let's see what's down the other shaft. We call that one from then on the long shaft, because it's like 2.5 miles long. And we're walking down it, and it's pretty flat and levelish, and actually it's still slightly going down deeper. And we're walking down it and walking, and notice periodically there's some holes in the ground, which really call it ground, but it's really, a mine shaft, so it's why I call it the ground. And they're about 14 inches square and about 6 inches to a foot deep, and just carved straight into the rock. And like, wow, that's kind of neat. I wonder if they had like the water drills sitting in there or something, or blasting equipment to blast, because they had to do something to dig this fucking shaft. And they dug it fucking beautiful, man. It's like, it looks well, it was machine made, but I mean, it's just pretty smooth. I mean, I'm thinking, wow, this was made back in the 1800s and shit. And we're going down, and suddenly I'm leading the way because these two people are slow. I mean, Peter's a great guy, but he is like 250 pounds. And Greg's just awesome, but he's nuts. He's crazy. He's a space cadet, so he gets distracted by anything. Ooh, something shiny. And he wanders off, I just want to see what's down here at the end. I want to fucking explore, get there. And so I'm leading the way, and about 20 feet ahead, and Greg stops, and he goes, oh, check this out. And he picks up a roll of cardboard stick about this long. And he's like, it's soggy wet. And he's banging on it. And just as I'm about to tell him, don't do that, he's like, maybe I shouldn't be doing this. And I'm like, no, gently put that back down. That isn't dynamite. The sogginess is because it's been sweating for the past 100 years. When you sweat dynamite, sweating by heating it and cooling it in a humid environment where it can absorb the moisture, then it evaps it out, and then it brings it back in. What it does is it brings nitroglycerin crystals to the outside. So bang, 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 and it explodes. And the whole thing explodes. And so I'm like, no, just put it down gently. And so he puts it back on the floor, and the stack of other ones in there, which then we realized what those really were, those holes in the ground. Those are dynamite holes where they keep their dynamite. So when the train cars, the ore carts come through, they don't knock into them or knock anything over. They're in little recesses in the ground. Smart, but they should have fucking took them out of the mine shaft before our dumbasses get there 100 years later. And so we're going some more, and Peter's smart enough to avoid the fucking dynamite holes. And we're going some more, and we're walking and walking. It's like another mile down, and then I'm at this point like, 20 yards ahead of them. Just enough to where I can see their light just behind me, because they're talking nonstop and annoying me, and their flashlights are shining everywhere and catching me in the corner of the eye. If they're behind me enough, I can still go see them if I need them, but their light isn't distracting me. And I can shine mine and see what I want to see and stuff, you know, see where the rock sparkles on the wall. And I'm going just at this part, just shining at the base to see if there's anything, you know, any ore basically that had fallen out of the carts onto here, because I know that the ore there is Mohawkite, which is a conglomeration. Oh, here, let me show you. This is Mohawkite. There's that. There's a side view of it, so you can see the raw unpolished. It is defined as occurs in Mohawk, a Meek area of Kewaunee County, Michigan. Mohawkite is mainly a copper arsenic compound. Also contains cobalt, silver, nickel, and iron. Mohawkite is rare. This is the only locality in the world where it can be found, and that's kind of a misleading statement. That's kind of misleading because, true, it's the only location that it can be found, but you can take any mixture of metal mined out of the ground. You know, here's a copper silver with something else, and it's only going to be found there because its chemical signature is unique to that mine. They're always just a slightly elements off the mixture ratio, which makes it unique to that mine, so it's always can only be found here. But anyway, it's the copper and silver that they're really after, the silver mixed in it. That's the money. So I'm looking for that, and I hear back from the idiots behind me. Greg goes, "Oh, look, a bat." Well, I grew up in the country. We had bats that lived out in our corn silo, and they would hang out on the power line at night and everything and just dart around all night, and we used to sit and watch them because there was like 20 to 40 of them, and so they ate all the mosquitoes. It was fucking awesome. I love bats. And I walk back there. Oh, yeah. There's a little brown furry bat. It looks like about the size of a kiwi, stuck to the side of the mine shaft wall, right where the transition of the corner is. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. I walk back up to where I was, about 20 yards. I have them. It was about that time now. They're finally starting to move. Yeah, that's how fucking slow they are. Oh my God. You know, to where I could walk 20 yards before they even decide, oh yeah, it's time to keep walking. And as I'm walking then, I'm thinking, oh yeah, he saw a bat, you know, and I'm reliving childhood of living in Indiana and seeing bats. And I wonder if there's any, and I just lift my flashlight down the mine shaft, which is straight as an arrow, this whole mine shaft, and see all the way down there till it fades out, and see up to the roof line. And as I'm bringing it towards the roof, towards me to straight up, the roof of the cave of the mine shaft isn't gray and stone like all the other stone is. It's brown. And it's not with a little bit of gray in between. And it's just all of it, all of it, all of it. And I shine it straight up. And I'm like, oh. And I shine down the side here, which is like 2.5 feet, 3 feet on the side. And it's the same as the ceiling. And so is this side. And I'm like, oh my God, this whole thing is, and I'm like, okay, I know it's in front of me too, but how much is it behind me? And I shine it behind me, and all the way on the ceiling and the sides between where I am and these two idiots are is solid fucking bats, forward and behind, the whole thing. It was like, oh my God. So I did the smart thing. I told them to just shine their lights at the ground because it's wet and slippery. So they never looked up, and we passed the entire bat section. You know, not that bats poop or have diseases that cause world pandemics or anything currently. You know, there's no place we should have died. And then after that, the mine shaft starts going down. And it's going down, and it goes down for about another half mile. And it's not going down like steep, but it's at a noticeable, well, this is easy to walk down. This is going to suck to walk back up type hill. And then it just abruptly ends. Well, we decide then, hey, this would be a great place to smoke a bowl. You know, let's get stoned now inside the inside the cave. We kept calling it cave, even though it's a mine shaft and mine side rails, whatever you want to call them. So we bust out a bowl, fire up the lighter, not realizing that there's probably a reason why the bats are up there and not down here at the bottom of the cave, which is farther away. You know, because poisonous gas and explosive gases are heavier than air and they sink. Yeah. So we fire up the lighter. Luckily, everything does not explode. And we proceed to smoke like 3 bowls of weed and get just fucking blitz hammered. And then we're laughing about the smoke is going up the cave and the bats are all getting stoned. I don't know if bats have THC receptors or not, but either way, probably smoke and bats and stoned bats. We didn't think that then we have to walk back through these stoned bats to get out of the fucking cave, you know, out of the mine shaft. So we finally finish smoking, and we walk back quietly this time, as quietly as we can, walk past the bats. And we get past the bats, we walk around the fucking dynamite, which is kind of funny because I'm like, dude, you were just pounding on the wall. Now you're doing this thing sliding against the wall, like, you know, but they're fucking stoned, so whatever. We get to the difficult part of the shaft with the wet, missing half of the carved-in stairs with slurry concrete mixed over them and fucking iron rope that's all rusty and frailed and shit, and climb all the way back out. And we're pretty muddy and dirty at this point, you know, way more than I thought. I thought we stayed clean. And it was just an amazing trip. So I go back into town and I tell some of my other friends about it and stuff that I made, you know, acquaintances and stuff, and they're all just amazed that I went to this place here after I've only been living here for like 6 months to a year, and they lived there their whole life and never seen this shit. So they're like, well, take me to it. So sure. So 3 more trips we go back down in that fucking thing, and each time, you know, looking at it now, I'm like, oh, we should have slipped and died on those stairs. We already saw that cave-ins happened regularly. That water's stagnant full of gas. There should have been gas at the bottom with the bats. Bats carry disease. You know, the list just keeps going on of things that could have went bad, that should have went bad, and we beat the odds each time. So I don't recommend going into mine shafts. But at the time, we had a fucking blast. You know, now looking back on it, I'm like, wow, we should have fucking died. You know, who else laughs death in the face? Well, I guess we do, at least when you're young. All right, well, puff, puff, pass, no parking on the grass. I'm out of here. I saw you went, and he's banging on something. And just as about to tell him, don't do that,